Hi, cool. Cool, yeah, spoilers. I forgot to update where this talk is. Sorry about that. I gave this talk at Nordic last week, so if you were at Nordic, it's the same talk, just so you know. If you weren't at Nordic, people said it was good, so hopefully I won't disappoint. Let me get this off of my head. So yeah, I want to talk about a thing that bothers me a little bit, and that's usually what happens with my talks. And so this time I want to talk about picking your game. I want to talk about how do you pick the right game to make? How do you pick the game that will work in the market, right? And before we start on that, I want to make one thing very clear. I do the same thing every talk, and I'll do it today as well. This talk is not truth, right? This talk is a perspective. I've been in the indie space for 15 years now. I've been there since Flash games. I've been there through the rise of the App Store. I've been there through the rise of boutique game publishers. We're one of Devolver Digital's first games published. And so I have a very specific perspective on the games industry. And that means that if I say things in this talk that you very strongly disagree with, just ignore me. It's fine. There's plenty of people who've done things in the games industry that worked out despite me thinking it's a bad idea. I would have never made a poker roguelike, personally. And that apparently was a really good idea. So, you know, this is just perspective. And as long as you keep that in mind and you take from this talk the things that you think are relevant and important and that could help you, that's good. But please don't think that I'm talking about the right way to make games. I mostly want to talk about a lot of bad ways of making video games. And that's what this talk is going to be about mostly. For those of you For those of you who want an introduction, my name is Rami Ismail. I'm not going to spend too much time here because I have very limited time. I co-founded a game studio called Vlaambeer, which existed from 2010 to 2020. I sold my part. My co-founder, Jan-Willem Nijman, is still doing that. I created Presskit, which is the industry standard Presskit tool. I run a conference called GameDev.world, which is an octolingual games conference. You can talk in one of 8 languages and we'll translate it to the other 7 live. I work as government relationships person for the Dutch Games Association. I do consultancy newsletters. I'm a supporter or a board member or former board member of the IGDA, Safe in a World, Able Gamers, Able to Play, etc., etc. Very early on when I started in the games industry, I told everybody I only drink Coca-Cola so people would stop offering me beer. I'm Muslim, I don't drink, and it's really hard to tell people don't give me beer, so I just told everybody I only drink Coke. The problem with that is everybody gave me Coke, so I gained like 14 kilos, so I can tell you, don't do that. Like, just tell people you don't want a beer. So let's talk about the problem, right? Let's talk about the problems in the games industry, because there's a lot of problems, but I think we can really bring this problem down to 3 major problems. The first one's, publishers are at the point of being useless. And I don't use that word lightly. The reason I say this is because the whole concept of the way this was supposed to work, is that publishers have money, right? And because they have money, they can take risk. So we come up with a game idea and we don't have money. And then they take a bet on us, we take their money, we make the game, and then the bet pays off and they get the money. And then after that, we get a bit of money as well, right? That's the deal. That was how it was supposed to work. But nowadays, if you've been pitching, who here is pitching at the moment? Just who's pitching a game right now? Who here has heard that phrase, if you were pitching? That's 100% the same hands, right? Like that's the exact same group of people. Right now, a lot of publishers are very risk averse. And there's reasons for that, right? There's really good reasons. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying the way money works right now, the amount of money publishers have, the risk assessment that publishers are making, means that they're stepping in later and later. And very often, they come in so late that they want to see audience validation. They want to see your wish list numbers. They want to see, and here's the thing, if your wish list numbers are good enough to convince a publisher, you don't need a publisher. Because you have the numbers. Right? At that point, you just need money. So if publishers are just money bags at this point, and they don't really offer anything else, then that's a problem. Because what we need from this publisher is this relationship where they take the risk from us, we make the game, and in exchange they get the benefit. But you would think that that would mean that deals are changing. They're not. What instead is happening is publishers are more risk averse, so they're pushing discussions into the future. They'll say, oh, this is great, but we need to see more. I call it pitch stalling. They'll just keep going like, oh, this looks amazing. How about you do like, you know, how about you get back to us at Gamescom? We're really into this. We absolutely want. They won't. They're just keeping you warm, right? So that's problem number 1. Publishers are taking less risk, right? Problem number 2, even with funding, making an indie game right now is really hard because we're just coming off of this funding spike during COVID where you could have 4 resumes and get $2 million. We're competing with that. Not only are we competing with that, we're competing with Fortnite. We're competing with Roblox. We're competing with Minecraft. We're competing with games that have been on the top of the Steam charts for years. And so even if we get the funding, and funding right now is less than it was 2 years ago, we still have to make a game that somehow can compete with the industry of 2-3 years ago. So that's incredibly hard as well. Now, because of that, publishers offer, because of that desperation, a lot of publishers offer worse and worse deals, which is the opposite of what we need. In fact, I started calling them publishers because there are a number of publishers out there, and I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say that all publishers are the same. There's a lot of good publishers out there still. But there are also a lot of publishers that will come to you and say, listen, we'll fund you $0, but we'll do $200,000 in marketing. Let me tell you, they won't do $200,000 in marketing. The contract will give them an out. They will put $5,000 in marketing, and if that works, they'll put $10,000. And if that works, they'll put $20,000. But it probably won't, because it's a very competitive market right now. So you can sign a contract that says $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in investment. They spend $10,000. If your game comes out and makes $5 million because you did the community work, because you built that audience, they will get that $400,000 that they spent, because that's the contract. They will recoup, right? So if you ever come across a contract like that, just walk away. Genuinely, you're better off without them than with them. Because $400,000 for updating a wiki, or making a Discord, or posting a Blue Sky post, that's not a good deal, right? And giving 100% of your revenue isn't a good deal either. And then finally, the audience. Reaching people is harder than ever. And because reaching people is harder than ever, one of the biggest things we need to do, well, one of the 2 biggest things we need to do, one of them is build community. And this is a pet peeve. If you've heard me speak before, you know that I have the same feeling year over year. People remember the publisher because people are manipulated. People are enticed to remember the publisher, right? Who published Cult of the Lamp? Devolver Digital. Yeah. Who developed Cult of the Lamp? Who developed Cult? Who's your colleague? Nobody knows, right? And that's the point. The point is, you attach the audience to the publisher, and then the publisher sells it back to us. Look at this amazing opportunity of us giving you access to the people that like your video game. And that's fucked up. So from where I'm sitting, we as developers need to do a better job. We need to build our own communities. We need to attach our audiences to us, to our games, to our studio, to our teams, to our people. Because if we do, we're building. We're building a name for our studio, we're building a name for our game, and that means the next time we have to negotiate with a publisher, we're in a better position to publish. Now, I want to emphasize, I am not saying publishers are a bad deal or that publishers are evil. Publishers are just doing business the best way they can in a pretty messed up situation because we are in trouble, right? This industry is going through a rough time. To get out of trouble, one, community building. But the second one is, how do you survive a situation like this? Well, by not picking a terrible game. And I want to stress this, and I'm not speaking about any game in particular that I'm seeing today. Most of us are really bad at picking games because we get scared. So if we want to survive this terrible games industry, there are 3 ways of doing that. Option 1, you're super rich. Who here is super rich? Because if you're super rich, this talk is going to be incredibly useless to you. Make whatever you want. If it does well, great. If it does poorly, also great. You're still super rich, right? If most of you are not super rich, let's go to the second one. Let's get very lucky. So if you're the kind of person who wakes up and then in the backyard, in the tree, you find a guy with a parachute who fell out of his private jet and has a bag of $1 billion on him, and he gives that to you, you also don't need this talk. If that's your kind of life, you're good. The third option is you do everything right. And by everything, I mean everything. Amazing game, great pitch, flawless development, few delays, viral. Please don't launch at the same time as Grand Theft Auto 6. Like, the basics, right? And you nail all of them. And if you nail all of them, it might also work out. Now, I don't have time to talk about all of these. Hell, I barely have time to talk about these. So what I want to talk about is picking an amazing game. So how do you pick the game? Well, that's the easy part. People think too much. What do you care about? What's the game you want to make? What's the game that you're excited about? What makes you wake up in the morning and go like, shit, this should exist. Why doesn't this exist? I want to make this, right? But I want you to separate that thought from the other thoughts. Because people go, oh, but this would be good for the market. This is a good fit. We don't know what's good for the market. Making a game takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years in some cases. Clair Obscur took 6 years. They didn't know whether that was a good idea. They didn't know whether people were looking for a French JRPG where people curse in French a lot. They had no idea. They just said this needs to exist. And so they built it. And they had money. But a lot of people say, like, oh, I want to make this game because it is unique. I don't give a shit. Nobody gives a shit. What's unique is making a game that you have to hold the spacebar, and if you don't, you get electrocuted. Very unique. Not good, right? So just that you're unique, that this is unique, isn't good enough. Everybody's unique. Everybody has their own thing, right? So you pick a thing that you care about. Please let go of the market, let go of Steam, let go of everything. Just let go of, don't let go of what do I want to build, okay? And that's step one. The second step is you kind of dig into it, you find it's hard, you rip it out, and then you figure out how to sell that, right? That's the sad part. Is you can care a lot about something, but it doesn't mean it's the right game to make. What it does mean is that you have an interest. You care, you want to build this. And so a lot of things in games that you will find when you talk about successful games, the reason they're successful is oddly because they figured out that they wanted to make a thing, but they're kind of bad at that thing. So they find a way around that. Some sort of unique solution that works for their team. And that's what makes the game stand out. They turn their weaknesses into strengths. They just pick a thing and they don't go, oh, we can't make this. They go, I want to make this. And we'll figure it out. Whatever way, we'll figure it out. And that's how these games happen, right? So, okay, we have a thing we want to make, and we have an idea of like, okay, this is the interesting thing about it, right? We don't know exactly what to do with it. Well, then we go through this thing. If you've seen my talks, you know what I mean by this. By prototyping, I mean sketching. I mean game development sketching. I mean 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 days. Whatever the shortest period of time is to make the shittiest version of your thing. I want your coder to be embarrassed and to never want to look at that code again. In fact, I tell my programmers that no matter the quality of the prototype, I will throw out the code at the end of the prototype. Because they'll hurry. They'll write it. They won't care about whether it's modular or whether you have good inheritance or whether the structure. No, they don't give a shit. It just needs to work right now, and that's all I need. Artists don't sketch with the idea of that being the final line painting. Writers don't draft with the idea that that's the book that they're selling. Programmers, designers, we need to do the same thing. Move fast, break things, right? And then we test. I'll get back to that. Make a clear production pipeline. That's what your vertical slice is for. Your vertical slice is not to prove the game. You've already proven the game. If you're at vertical slice, you're past prototyping, you know the game works. It's fun, it's interesting, it's worth making. You do not make the slice to test that because that costs you 6 months to a year to do for most games. That's a year of your time that you're spending on when you don't know whether the game is going to work. And you go to pitching, and every publisher will say like, oh yeah, this year we don't think dogs is a thing. And your game happens to be about a dog, and now you're fucked. Right? That's genuinely how it goes. Just publishers are very trend sensitive. So if you're out of the trend, you're done. You need to be there in months, right? Not a year, not 2 years. If you're making certain genres, that's hard. But and then pitch your game to all publishers. If unsuccessful, you go loud. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to start perfect. Please don't think you have to start perfect with your game. You just have to build something. I'm checking the time because this is going really fast. Something has to be more than it's really cool. Everybody thinks their game is cool. I've never met a person that go like, what are you making? And they're like, oh, it sucks. We all think it's cool. We need more than that. So here, the most important thing in this early stage is safeguard your momentum. Are you still making progress? If you're working on a prototype and the first 2 weeks there's all this excitement and it's going fast and everybody's excited, and then 2 weeks later you're like, oh yeah, we just need a little bit more. And then 4 weeks later you're like, oh, we just need a little bit more. And then 4 weeks later it's, oh, we just need, so close. Kill it. You're not going to get there. That's not how this works. If you don't get there, put it in the fridge, come back 3 years later. Nuclear Throne, which I worked on at Vlaanderen, we started that game 3 times. In 2011, in 2013, and in 2014. And the only problem we had is we hadn't figured out how to end the levels. Because we just put a door in the level, people ran to the door and beat the level. They didn't fight, they didn't play, they didn't do anything, they just skipped it. And in the end, Willem Nijman, my co-founder, came to me and said, what if there is no door? The door appears when you kill the last enemy. Fixed it. The game was good. That was it. That was genuinely, that was the difference between bad Nuclear Throne and good Nuclear Throne, is we hadn't thought about that you don't need a door. And it took us 3 years to get there, right? But that's the point. We could have spent those 3 years trying to find that. We could have spent months trying to find it, but it wouldn't be guaranteed that that version of us would have figured that out. So we fridged it, we came back to it later, right? So you safeguard your momentum. And here's the thing, listening to tons of pitches, whatever you think you're doing, we've seen it before. Right? I listen to a lot of pitches. I work as a consultant, I work as a scout, I work as an agent. I see 20, 30, 40 pitches probably more every month. You start seeing themes. Like if you're a programmer, you're probably doing a 4X or a strategy game. Why? Your brain works that way. It's not always true, but the majority of programmers will move in the direction of strategy, things with like systems that interact in an interesting way, just because that's fun. Usually not to an artist. Artists will work on RPGs or narrative games or things where they can show off their artist chops, these big worlds, big set pieces. You have a designer, guaranteed you're working on a deck builder. Right? Because that's interesting. So we've seen it. It's not new. That part isn't new. Just listing genres isn't new. We know. You're you. You're interested in this thing, you're going to follow it. Right? So I want you to forget this idea of USPs, unique selling points. Everybody talks about unique selling points. Right now it's a world of hooks. Hooks being 3 different words, right? Hooks, books, and looks. Now I want you to forget about books because this was stolen from movies. Movies were right about this, it happens. Books was merchandising. Hook was a single simple statement that sells the point of your game in such a way that you can imagine somebody telling their friend, oh, you should play this game, it is XYZ. One sentence. Have you ever had a friend come to you and go like, oh, you should play this strategic action roguelike with deck building elements? No. Then why the fuck is that on every pitch that I read right now? What is special about your game in such a way that if I take that sentence and I type that into Google, I find your game? Right? If your game comes out and I love it and I sit with a friend 5 years from now and we're talking and they're like, oh, I would really love to play a deck builder. And I'm like, oh, I played this cool one. It's like, you're kind of like robbing a dungeon and there's like coins and you equip armor, but then the armor is, it's great. And it's like this 1 sentence, 1.5 sentence there, where if you type that whole thing out, at the moment you still find that game. Right? Ridiculous Fishing is a game about fishing with machine guns, toasters, and explosives. Guaranteed, you type that into Google, you get Ridiculous Fishing, because who the fuck makes that? Right? So the idea is a high concept. A high concept being something that you can explain in 1 or 2 sentences in such a way that you can Google it. If you have that for your game, you're in a good spot. If you don't have that for your game, you're in a rough spot. And then looks. And looks is very simple. If I see a screenshot of your game, how easy is it to mistake your game for somebody else's game? If I see a screenshot of your game and go, oh, that's it. I remember that. That's good, because we're going to show it to them over marketing over a number of times. And if they go, oh yeah, that game, that's amazing. I saw a game earlier today for a pitch. I saw it once. This person had pitched to me 2 years ago or a year ago. I saw the game and be like, oh, this one. That's what you want. You want people to want to put your trailer in the Microsoft like sizzle reel. You want Jeff Keighley to get excited about it, right? So looks. How do I immediately understand what your game is? How do I look at it and go, oh, that game? So the so what and Google it later rules are incredibly important. So what is actually a very helpful rule as well. Oh, I'm making a roguelike, so what? So what? That's a much more interesting question. So what? This is your art style, so what? Can you tell me why this matters? And if you can't tell me why this matters, figure it out. Because your brain is very good at this. It gets ahead of you. It already knows things that you haven't figured out yet. All you need to do is sit down and be that annoying 4-year-old kid that goes, why is the sky blue? You go, oh, because of the light. And it's like, but isn't the light white? It's like, yeah, it has to do with molecules. But why? Be that with your own game. Keep chasing until you figure out, so what? That matters. And there's a time for recklessness, right? Like if you're prototyping, that's the time for recklessness. After that, it gets harder and harder and harder to be reckless because you have more and more game that you're pulling apart every time you make a change. So you want to make sure that you move forward and that you're reckless at the start. Please use your recklessness now. When you're coming up with a game, do the crazy thing. Make the poker roguelike, right? Make the weird French RPG. Do the reckless thing and then start checking whether this is actually going to work. You don't check before you do it. That's not how this works. Iteration doesn't work that way, right? You have an idea, you test it, you figure out, you implement it, you test it, and you figure out whether it works, right? For context for you, I put this fun fact here. On the average game that I work with, people send out about 2 to 270 pitches, right, for their game. They get a response of 2 to 4 from publishers. And I don't mean 2 to 4 yeses. I mean 2 to 4 replies that aren't just like, thank you for sending in your pitch, right? So it's low. If you're getting 10, 15, you're doing great, right? So this is why this matters. This is why this is important, because it is so easy to get lost in all the games that are being made. And speaking of moving fast, please test. The amount of times I come across a game and people tell me, oh, yeah, we've been working on this for a year and a half. We're doing our first playtest. Like, what? Your first playtest? Why was your first playtest not on week 1? Right now, if you're making a game that you can't test in week 1, okay. But your RPG shooter game, you can test that. Does shooting feel good? Does moving feel good? Does walking feel good? Does selecting a unit feel good? Does moving a unit feel good? Does building anything feel good? A building? Whatever it is, does it feel good? Is it interesting? Is there something here? Test aggressively from the start. Test is not a polished thing. Test is a fundamental part of the iteration cycle. You gotta be testing. You can't be testing 6 months into your project. Start testing as soon as possible. You don't have to test the whole game. Test parts of your game. Test the menu. Test the interface. Test the way the stick feels walking around. Test these things. Get your answers. Get certainty, because that's a really shitty thing to find out 8 months into your project that your project is bad. That's 8 months of your life. It takes 2 years to make a game. I'm 36. I have 15 games left, and that's the retirement age. You think I want to spend 8 months of my life going like, oh yeah, this might be interesting, and then a year later going like, oh no, it's shit. I could have figured it out 2 weeks in. Don't do that. Start testing aggressively at the start. And think Kickstarter. Don't do Kickstarter. Sorry, don't do Kickstarter. Think Kickstarter. Okay? I want you to think Kickstarter. How do I present this game? If I had to do a Kickstarter because I didn't get funding, how do I talk about this game? Is there a moment in the game that looks really good on a GIF? Is there a scene, a character, a thing? Is there something that I could talk about? Is there something that I could show? Is there something that fits in a 30-second GIF? Is there something that I could put on TikTok or Instagram or whichever one it is? I don't care. How do we get to talk about our game is a very important part of design as well. That's not marketing, that's design. That's fundamentally the heart of your game. How do I get people to engage with this, right? And then shut the fuck up about it. Don't talk about your game yet. Everybody says talk about your game as early as possible. I strongly disagree, and you can disagree with me. I say shut up about your game until you've talked to the publishers. If you've talked to the publishers and all of them say no, then go loud. Because here's the thing, if you go loud about your game and nobody cares, you can't talk to publishers anymore, because they'll ask what are your Steam numbers, and you go like 12. And they'll go like, well, that's not very high. And it's like, no. And then the deal is done. Now, if you shut up about the game and every publisher says no, you can still just go on Blue Sky and go like, hi, we're announcing our, I don't know, like game about cuddling dogs, right? And if that goes viral, the publisher ain't gonna go like, oh, we just said no to that. Darn it. No, they're just gonna come back to you and go like, hey, can we offer you that bag of money we talked about? So from a risk perspective, there's never a good reason to not go talk to people with money first. Just don't spend too much time there. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, put that into your development cycle. If at that point you've got nothing, go loud. Go loud. Just tell everybody, right? And with that said, that 2% that I was talking about earlier, it's very important that you recognize that very likely your game is not getting funded. Almost certainly you're not getting funding right now, which given everything that's happening in the publisher space and how they're dealing, and the publishers out there, very often self-funding ends up being the path that you're going to take, right? So there's two versions of this project, and every project you do right now needs to have two versions of this project. One, the one that you can fund, and one, the one that publishers can fund. Never, for the love of God, pitch the version that you can fund to the publisher. If you're going to work with a publisher, ask for the jackpot. Take the money, because if they want it, they see money. And then you should get money. And you should get money to make that game, right? So don't take the like, oh yeah, I can do it if I don't pay myself salary, I have a side job, and like I have a friend that works for free. Fuck no. Everybody is $3.5 grand a month. Why? Because that's San Francisco. No, it's not San Francisco. That's way too low for San Francisco. But that's reasonable rates in the games industry. Ask for money, right? If they're interested, take that money. Pitch the best version of your game. Now, if you're coming in and it's your first game and you're coming in like, I need 11.5 million. No. No, please, stay realistic, right? But realistic is a lot larger than you think. Right? That's a much larger number than you originally think. And so people ask me, but how do I validate my business case? Well, you pitch it, and if somebody takes it, you validated it. That's it. That's the only way to validate a business case. I can tell you it looks good. But a business case is worth $0. A game is worth $0 until somebody pays for it. So until that time, treat it as if it's $0. You need to be able to walk away. You cannot fall in love with your game to such a degree that you cannot not kill it. That you cannot kill it. That you cannot kill it, right? You have to be able to walk away. You have to be able to say, this isn't working. And you have to make these validation points 3 months, 6 months into your project where you say, okay, let's sit together. Are we getting somewhere? Is there progress? Is there publisher interest? Are we getting interest anywhere? Are testers reacting to it as well? Are we still excited about this? Have these moments, talk to each other before you make these decisions. If you have to go loud, the one tip that I currently have is this algorithm changes every 6 months. So this is not going to be true by the time this is being recorded. If it is being recorded by the time this is on YouTube, it won't be true anymore. If it's not being recorded, it probably won't be true in 3 to 6 months. At the moment, the algorithm is understood to work by velocity. So the more you get in a short time, the better it is. Some developers have switched to not asking for wish lists and instead getting people to join their Discord. And then from the Discord, send everybody to ask for the wish list at the same time, right before a Steam Next Fest or something. So you have a little bit of momentum and then you can jump off of that. That's how it currently is. It might not be true tomorrow. Hell, it might not be true today at this point because they keep changing these rules. As soon as we figure it out, there's new rules. Figure out what the meta is. There's a meta to marketing your game. Figure out the meta, play along. Cool. And like I said, be prepared to kill it fast. No project that you rely on for income should ever take 6, 12, 14, 18 months to figure out whether it's worth something. You wouldn't accept that for any other thing in your life. If you have a job and they say, like, yeah, we'll figure out in 12 months whether we'll pay you. No. If this industry has switched to B2B as much as it has, we're making games for publishers and they're selling it to consumers, treat it like B2B, right? Which means, yes, there's time for R&D, which is 3, 4, 5 months max. Figure out whether it's going to work. If you still believe in it, despite nobody giving you money, go loud. Go as loud as possible. If nobody wants it, be prepared to kill it fast. So in short, hooks. Games with hooks, looks, and books, except for books. Speed, move fast, choose fast, test fast, kill fast. And for volume, it's very important that you pick when and where you go loud. Thank you.